Now, Labour's plans to define Islamophobia has sparked warnings that it could spark social unrest. Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner wants a new legal description for unacceptable treatment of Muslims, but campaigners say it risks creating a backdoor blasphemy law and could have a chilling effect on free speech. Let's get a word on this from Rafe Heydel-Mankoo, of course, broadcaster, historian and fellow at the New Culture Forum. Always good to see you, Rafe. Thank you for coming on this one. It's kind of bubbled away in the background, this one. I think yes, it has had some debate and discussion. I wouldn't say it makes the main headlines on the news. It probably should do, however. Just explain what this proposal is, firstly.
Yes, this is deeply worrying and chilling stuff. And if you watch the mainstream media, the legacy media, you won't actually find this discussed anywhere. It's only on great channels like Talk that we're having these conversations. Essentially, Angela Rayner and the Labour Party want to instill a new definition of Islamophobia across the public sector and wider. And this, of course, will essentially result in an Islamic blasphemy law by the back door. We did away with blasphemy laws in this country a while ago. We're going to have it reintroduced, perhaps, but it's going to apply only to one religion. Only one religion is above touching. And these discussions about defining Islamophobia are so critical, but they're being held in private by a small coterie, a group led by Dominic Grieve, the former Tory, who many people will remember tried to thwart Brexit at every step of the process, along with 3 Muslims. They're the ones who are going to decide on the definition of Islamophobia. It looks like they're going to lean towards what's the all-party parliamentary group's definition, which is an extremely insidious definition. They define Islamophobia as being a form of racism that targets Muslimness and perceptions of Muslimness. Now, what does perceived Muslimness mean? I mean, this is quite ridiculous. What essentially it's saying is if you attack anything that somebody thinks is linked to Islam, you could be criminalized as being Islamophobic. That could actually mean that we can't discuss polygamy or cousin marriage or child marriage or religiously sanctioned wife beating, even perhaps not being able to discuss the rape gangs. That's how insidious this is. It's coming at a time, of course, where we see in America and elsewhere great concern about the threats to free speech in this country. Britain is no longer, last month a report came out saying that Britain is no longer included in the top category of nations with the highest level of free speech. All the other nations are there from the West: Australia, Canada, America, Europe. We, in this Global Freedom of Expression report, have been relegated to the second tier of nations next to Colombia, Nigeria, and Sierra Leone. This is all very worrying stuff.
And it's interesting that, as you said at the beginning, Rafe, I mean, this is just one religion for some curious reason. I mean, I'd give them a little bit of credibility if they were just honest and said, look, we actually quite like the idea of a blasphemy law and it applies to all faiths and therefore we'll come down equally on anyone that takes criticism to another level, shall we say. You know, we want to smash up your house because you're a Christian, or we're going to throw pork chops at your windows because you're a Jew, etc. If that was the direction of travel, I would still have a problem with it, but you could see a consistency. But this is just isolating one faith. Do we know what the thinking behind it was, Rafe, as to why they selected just Islam for this?
You may well ask that question. To get to the first part of your comment there, absolutely. All religious minorities are already protected. There is absolutely no need for this. The 2010 Equality Act protects all religions, and there's the 2006 Racial and Religious Hatred Act, which makes it an offence to incite hatred against someone on the basis of their religion. But crucially, that act makes clear that does not prohibit discussing or criticising the religion. It's one thing, you know, we should be talking about anti-Muslim hatred, which is a vile thing, just as bad as anti-Semitism. But no religion should be free from criticism. No ideology should be free from criticism. But 100%. That's what this is going to do. And to get to your point, why is this being done? It's being done because Labour is petrified of losing the Muslim vote. We all talk about the Reform MPs who won at the last general election. We need to talk more about the independent Muslim vote MPs who won at the last election. That's a demographic that's only going to grow. And the Labour Party is trying to essentially win back all those who are disaffected over things like Gaza and so forth. But also, in parts of the north of England, the Muslims are a critical mass. They don't need to have representation by the Labour Party anymore. So what the Labour Party is offering them, they're saying, look, there's no point wasting your vote on independent MPs. They can't change things. We are the government. We can protect you. We can bring in this Islamophobia law. We can potentially, just have local inquiries on the rape gangs and grooming gangs if you lend us your vote. That's what's going on here. Also remember, people like Angela Rayner, people like Jess Phillips, the safeguarding minister for women, her majority is only a few hundred votes. The Muslim vote is what's keeping her in power.
Absolutely.
That's why we have somebody, Jess Phillips, who claims to be a champion of women, was all behind Me Too, wanting people to resign if they put their hand on a woman's knee, yet remarkably silent about the rampant misogyny within certain areas of the Islamic community, and obviously the sexual assaults and the grooming gang story, refuses to condemn that. I mean, the ultimate in hypocrisy.
I mean, this is crazy. As you rightly said there, it's already illegal to be a mad racist, and correctly you will be dealt with by the courts. You might go to jail, you might get whatever. If you're bullying somebody, harassing them, whether it happens in the workplace or in the pub, all of that stuff is still already illegal, which makes the whole thing even more mysterious. I've always said that satire around religion and lampooning those that proclaim to know who the great God is that made us all. I mean, it's such a bold statement of any faith to have that. I mean, I think to satirise that should almost be taught in school, for goodness sake. It's fundamental to free speech. And yet here we are going backwards, selecting one particular religion and deciding that, if I want to have a pop at something... For example, I find it quite fun to look at the different attire that religious leaders wear, whether it's the imam or the vicar. Seeing a bloke up there with a dress on every single Sunday, wearing some weird garb, I find that is kind of a bit of an open goal to question how with it that some of these things are. But I say that kindly. I don't, I think it's great that people retain their own traditions, on the other hand. But I want to be able to say that if I think it. I shouldn't be thinking, am I going to get a knock on the door from the police because I dared to pick out what somebody was wearing in their place of worship?
Yes, and of course, everyone remembers Monty Python. Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition, where you have the cardinals arriving and so forth. Satire is just as important, and criticism is just as important to Western culture as Islam and the Quran is to the Arab world. Satire is a fundamental aspect of Western culture and civilization, particularly British and English culture, and yet it's taking the knee, it's taking a back seat to a foreign religion. Remember, we still have an established Church of England and an established Church of Scotland. No religion, no ideology should be free from criticism. This is extremely worrying. We know from polling that if Angela Rayner goes through with this Islamophobia blasphemy law, Reform could end up with a 100-seat majority, because Reform would gain 1% in the polls and Labour would lose 3% in the polls. Right. This is according to a poll by JL Partners done last month. Yeah. So that could actually backfire terribly. Labour is trying to placate the Muslim vote, but it may end up alienating particularly its red wall. But what's so insidious here is this attempt to link Islamophobia to racism. And you ask them, why is that? They say, well, because most Muslims are non-white. That's so absurd. Most Catholics in this world are non-white. Is it racist to attack the Pope or Catholicism? Yeah. Most communists in this world are Chinese. Is it now racist to attack the communism? And also, of course, you've got the Sunni and Shia groups in Islam, just as hostile as the Protestants and Catholics used to be in the old days. They hate each other. Are they Islamophobic if they condemn the other group? Point. That's a good point. It's completely absurd.
I mean, you'd think, Rafe, if nothing else, the fact that Dominic Grieve is involved in the decision-making process would be enough to tell any objective onlooker this is probably not worth even pursuing. I mean, you've got a man who habitually is on the losing side, and here he is again, somehow finding himself. I'm sure he's getting paid a few quid for his services. He's a good legal brain. I'm sure he's a very nice man and a great lawyer to sort out your parking ticket if you've been given one badly. But I'm not absolutely sure he's politically on the money when it comes to public thought.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And what's worse, though, is that this term Islamophobia that they're trying to bring in, and which Dominic Grieve is personally invested in. I mean, he's got a long track record of wanting to instill this definition of Islamophobia. Islamophobia wasn't coined by the Muslim Brotherhood, but they are the ones who popularized it. The Muslim Brotherhood are a deeply anti-Semitic, violent, extremist organization, deeply misogynistic, ties to Hitler and Nazism, and they wanted to use this term Islamophobia to conflate anti-Muslim hatred with criticism of Islam. So Islamophobia was designed specifically to be a tool with which to demonize anybody who criticizes the religion of Islam rather than who attacks individual Muslims. And so the Muslim Brotherhood clearly wanted Islamophobia to become a weapon and a tool for jihadis. And just remember, this is the group who translated Mein Kampf into Arabic, who met with Hitler in Nuremberg, who helped to form an SS brigade to kill Jews in the Balkans, celebrated all these sort of anti-Semitic Nazi propaganda and embedded them into Arab culture. That's what we're talking about here. Unfortunately, in the 1990s, Trevor Phillips, who ran the Runnymede Trust, he incorporated this definition of Islamophobia into British life. And now he deeply regrets having done so because he's realized how damaging it is. And unfortunately, the Labour Party still haven't cottoned onto this, or at least they're not brave enough to call it out for what it is.
Listen, it's always very thorough stuff. Rafe, great to have you on to explain this in more detail. Thank you for your time. Rafe Heydel-Mankoo, broadcaster, historian and fellow at the New Culture Forum. Isn't that the whole point? I'd like to think that other religions look at Christianity, the main religion in this country, and probably find some weirdness in that. I'm sure in another world I'd find it weird that people put a dead tree in their house once a year at Christmas and stick a fairy on the top and then illuminate it and add some chocolate. And then they put something called tinsel, and then they have little baubles. Some might have their own kids' names on them. Just take a step back and think about how mad that is. We do that every year. They look gorgeous, by the way. I'm excited. It's nearly September, which in my head means it's nearly Christmas, because I'm thinking of that tree. But I could see how somebody could objectively go, that's bonkers, that tree thing they do. That's really, really weird. You see what they do? And then they stick some presents underneath it. And they buy all this paper that they wrap the presents up with, and they just rip it off. It's kind of mad. And then they buy loads of chocolate to eat over like a 2-week period. Massive amounts of chocolate. Filthy old Christian fatties. I'm sure that is probably quite amusing. Satire, because religion, of all the subjects you can talk about, it's the one area of public discourse that is purporting to know the meaning of life. And if that isn't an absolute open goal for a good old healthy dose of occasional ridicule, certainly criticism, certainly debate, then I can't think of a single subject that is. People who are saying, yeah, I know how it started, I know who the main God is, it's not the one that he said over there, not that Jewish fella, and not that Christian fella, or not that Muslim fella. It's our belief, the Sikh belief, or whatever religion it happens to be. I mean, it's so loaded with such tasty invites to critique. I don't even know where to start. It's beautiful, right? Of all the things in life, you should be not just allowed to, but encouraged to, at the very, very least, robustly question. But when you feel like it, happily lampoon. It should be religion. So if anything comes along in the 21st century and says, oh, we're going to take this one religion, and I'm not disputing, by the way, people who are shouted at in the street, attacked in the street, even lose their lives because of their faith, whether they happen to be Muslims or Jews or anyone else for that matter. Around the world, the statistics will differ. But all of that stuff, murder and racial abuse is already illegal. Attacking somebody in the street in whatever manner is already an issue of so all these things are already criminal. So why are we taking something to another sort of level which sounds a little bit like it's going to stop people joking or fundamentally disagreeing with something? I mean, this is just nuts. This is terrifying, by the way. It should just be laughable, but it's actually quite scary. 0344 499 1000. Cliff says, If a blasphemy law did come in to protect Islam, how long would it be before they would want the religious police, which are a feature in some Islamic nations? Or that's a good point. But how long might it be before another religion says, hang on a sec, what about us? My name's Brian and so is my wife. You know, you could get into that